Joining me now with insight about Brazil's politics is Juan Carlos Hidalgo. He's a policy analyst on Latin America at the CATO Institute, a think tank based here in Washington, D.C. Many of these MPs who voted for the impeachment were once allies, supporters of Rousseff. She's talking about betrayal. She's talking about injustice, being persecuted. All these statements coming out right now as she speaks to reporters. This is a woman who had an approval rating of 80% at one time. Now it's about 10%. What a fall from grace. Kind of give me your sense of how all of this transpired.
Indeed, a lot has to do with the economy. Brazil was doing quite well. About 5 years ago, the economy was growing at a 7% rate. Unemployment was low. Poverty has been reduced dramatically. Inequality has been reduced. But most of this had to do with the high price of commodities. Brazil was doing well because it was exporting iron ore, it was exporting other commodities to China, and the deceleration of China exposed many of the flaws that the economy had, and now the economy is in a very dire situation. Unemployment is near to 10%, the fiscal deficit is near to 11%, and this has contributed to the president's plummeting popularity. Also, a major scandal broke out a couple of years ago involving many people that are close to the president. The main oil company, Petrobras, it has lost $17 billion in value due to bribing schemes and failed projects because of this corruption scandal. So this has certainly contributed to the president's decline in popularity, and this is why we are now witnessing her downfall.
And it is quite a crisis. Walk us through the next steps, because now it goes to the upper house. It's just a simple majority, actually, is all to take up the motion, correct? So give me an idea of how long this process takes, and then what happens if they do accept this motion.
Indeed. Now a committee in the Senate will take the case and vote whether to take it to the full House or whether to just leave it there. It's very likely that the Senate is going to vote to take the case. And then it's a very similar process as here in the United States. It will be like a trial where the Chief Supreme Justice will be the chair of the trial. There will be both sides will present their case. It will take 180 days. And during this process, the president has to step down and the vice president will take over. That's the difference between the Brazilian process and the United States process. We saw here during the Clinton years when President Clinton was impeached that he remained in charge of the executive. In Brazil, she has to step down, and during that process, the president will take over. Also, the length of the process is much larger in Brazil, 180 days, during which we will have the Olympics, for example, in Rio this summer. So it's going to be a very complicated period. It will be much easier for Brazilians if she just resigns, because it's very likely that she's going to end up being found guilty of the charges that they are imputing against her. And all these uncertainties not going to contribute to the health of the economy or the health of Brazil's democracy.
What's the likelihood of that, though, when you hear her kind of digging in her heels now, saying that this is a coup d'etat, that that she's being persecuted? It doesn't seem as though she wants to hand in her resignation anytime soon.
No, she won't. I'm pretty sure she won't. But this is not a coup. I mean, the rules are written into the Constitution. Article 85 is very clear, and it explicitly states what are the reasons under which a president can be impeached, one of them being illegally handling the fiscal accounts of the country. She was found to be illegally handling the fiscal accounts of the country by an independent court. So there is a legal reason for her impeachment. Maybe it's too drastic. I will agree with that. But Brazilians are fed up with her. Over 60% of people want her gone. So I don't think that this can be stopped now.
The vice president himself, though, has problems too, doesn't he? I mean, there's talk of impeachment of him.
Indeed, since this was a crime committed by the president and the vice president, he also signed some of these illegal accounts trickery. So there is a case that he could face impeachment, and actually a justice of the Supreme Court said that there should be also an impeachment proceeding against the vice president. But the Speaker of the House, who is also from the party of the vice president, dismissed that at the moment. We don't know how that is going to end.
Let me ask you this. This is one of the worst political crises in decades there. Also, you're talking about the economic crisis, which you brought up, also one of the worst in some time. You have the Olympics coming up. This country suffering quite a black eye. How does Brazil bounce back from all of this?
I like to see the glass full half full instead of half empty, because the institutions in Brazil are showing some resilience. The fact that you have an independent judiciary prosecuting a president and prosecuting a former president, for example, and leading politicians not only from the incumbent party, not only from the governing party, but from all political parties, independent judges, independent attorneys, independent prosecutors. This shows that there is something working in Brazil. I mean, corruption has always been a feature of Brazilian politics, but now we're seeing that the institutions are finally trying to combat that. So I think that Brazil will emerge stronger from this episode.
All right, we're still a ways from the ending of all of this. Juan, thanks so much for coming in. Appreciate it.